What's going on, everybody? Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well over you. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and I know that you are concerned about the state of the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver position. In case you missed it on Monday, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver James Washington, the team's first external free agent signing of the offseason, had what looked to be a not great moment. A foot fracture is what it is believed James Washington may be dealing with. Obviously, at the time that I'm putting this video together, we're still waiting to hear the exact details, but needless to say, the Dallas Cowboys need to start considering some options as far as adding a wide receiver to their team. Now, this has been true for a while. You can make an argument that before the Dallas Cowboys even got to Oxnard, California, that they should have added a wide receiver. But here we sit. You look at the kind of math of the situation. If we presume James Washington to be missing any time, whatever that winds up being, the fact that Michael Gallup is on the PUP list and is at the very least going to miss week 1 of the 2022 season, maybe even more. The Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb. We obviously feel great about him, but after that, it's a lot of hoping and a lot of wishing. So it's time for the Cowboys to look at some other options. We've put together a list of 5 for you at bloggingtheboys.com and going to discuss them here today in a little bit of detail. Let's start with the one I think is the most likely, and that is Will Fuller, currently a free agent. Obviously, all of these players are free agents. Will Fuller last played with the Miami Dolphins, but kind of barely played with them in 2021. Obviously, most people know Will Fuller from his time with the Houston Texans. Obviously, had a great collegiate career at Notre Dame, part of that 2016 NFL draft class that brought the Cowboys their, kind of iconic players at the moment. Will Fuller, I think, makes the most sense as far as what the Cowboys have lost in James Washington. Again, we don't know exactly how long Washington's going to be out. He may not even be out if for that long of a time, but we're looking at all options here. And again, the Cowboys could certainly afford to add a receiver even if Washington is still totally healthy, which we hope is the case. But Will Fuller is a deep threat. We know Dak Prescott obviously has a lot of success as far as his deep ball is concerned. He's a great deep passer. Will Fuller brings that to the table, kind of a Deshaun Jackson light sort of player. Deshaun Jackson light as far as Deshaun Jackson's prime. Deshaun Jackson not on this list, by the way, just to kind of spoil that for you. It makes sense. I know he had some issues with the Dolphins, the suspension and the finger injury last year in Miami, but right now, any player we talk about, any name we bring up, there are going to be some questions. There's going to be some reason why we don't feel great about them, and so you have to accept that that's the case. Will Fuller, I think, it just makes it's the best fit if you're trying to kind of Indiana Jones idle swap for something else, the little bag or whatever it is. This is the one that I think you most want to pursue if you're the Cowboys, but we'll see if they decide to go that direction. Option number 2, the way we've categorized this, is definitely possible and a safe option. That's Emmanuel Sanders. In the article I wrote at bloggingtheboys.com, I mentioned, we talk about the Super Bowl that Mike McCarthy won in AT&T Stadium. Little kind of fun fact, that was won against Emmanuel Sanders' team. He was a rookie on those Pittsburgh Steelers in 2010, so he's been in the NFL for a minute. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, is most known for the time that he spent in Denver. He was a part of the team that did win the Super Bowl that year, Super Bowl 50 it was, with Peyton Manning and Demaryius Thomas and Von Miller and all them. And since then has still been productive, but hasn't quite had the same career. Over the last couple of years, it's kind of felt like Emmanuel was trying to find the right situation, maybe a team that could have success, that he could contribute to, a team with theoretically a great quarterback. And 2 years ago, he joined the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, in 2020, Michael Thomas, that whole issue kind of started up, and so his role changed, I think, from what it was expected to be early on. Still had a really productive season in 2020 for New Orleans, over 700 yards. Last season, linked up with the Buffalo Bills, and again, that kind of feeds the idea, right? Looking for a team that's going to be successful with a great quarterback, and was, still fairly good. Again, we're not there's nobody available right now that is going to come in and be a wide receiver 1 on any NFL team. But Emmanuel Sanders, the reason I think he's a safe option is he always kind of stays healthy. You can count on him for 13, 14 games. And that's not even what we're necessarily kind of banking on here. He just needs to come in and be a reliable option for the Cowboys until they get to Michael Gallup. Until Michael Gallup can come back, whatever week that is. I mean, I'm not saying it's this long for Gallup, but if he can come in and just be an option in the first 6 weeks of the season, I think that is already a huge win. So I think this is a high floor option, which is what you're looking for in this isn't an emergency situation, but emergency situations like this, Emmanuel Sanders checks a lot of boxes. Now, this one, speaking of math checking out, is difficult to kind of unwrap. Now, last week, actually, Cole Beasley tweeted while the Cowboys were, busy, that he would be interested in returning to the team that he started his NFL career with, mostly because of the presence of Dak Prescott at quarterback. Obviously, Dak's still the quarterback, so, that variable is there, that variable that Cole is seemingly seeking. the math checks out, I think, because he certainly comes in and helps this team. The Cowboys, Cole Beasley is primarily a slot receiver, obviously, and the Cowboys love to move CeeDee Lamb around, and so maybe you run into some weird stuff that way. Right now the Cowboys need somebody who can not just play the slot, but play on the outside. They need an option who can do it all. They need a stable veteran and a stable body. But even if you want to hold that against Cole, and maybe he doesn't play on the outside as much, I mean, he still comes in and significantly adds quality to your room. Right now, you need options if you're the Dallas Cowboys. You need players that you can trust. And I know that Cole Beasley, and this is probably the biggest factor, is he's a bit of a political lightning rod, right? The last 2 years, Cole Beasley has been the subject of a lot of discussions and a lot of debates relative to the NFL and whatnot. And obviously, the Cowboys have felt a certain way about that. We all know what we're talking about. And so in that way, this does feel like the least likely option, but given his familiarity with the team, given his familiarity with the quarterback, if the Cowboys are looking to kind of, take the path of least resistance, Cole Beasley makes sense in that way, which is why I said the math checks out. But next up on our list, T.Y. Hilton. He is available. He is a free agent. He is an option. He's only played his career with the Indianapolis Colts, and every year, it feels like a rite of passage, right? Like, is T.Y. going to return? Are the Colts going to have him back? For the new quarterback that's coming in, T.Y. has been one of the biggest common denominators with the Colts ever, since Andrew Luck retired, obviously, since before then, part of the same draft class actually as Luck, but I just don't know. I don't see it. I think people kind of lump him in the same kind of mold as Will Fuller and Deshaun Jackson, that kind of deep home run thread, and that's fine, but I don't really, I don't know that you can rely on him. Had a little bit over 300 yards last year, and I'm not trying to just kind of pick and choose in tiny little things like that, but this one just feels like the least trustworthy thing to me. No disrespect to T.Y. Hilton. Obviously, he's been a fantastic player for a long time in the NFL, but it doesn't feel like the same to me as other options. Finally, and I will admit, this is not the same thing. We're having this discussion because of the situation surrounding James Washington and the fact that the Cowboys seemingly need an answer right now. So in that sense, this does not make sense. But since we're having the conversation, we might as well have the conversation. Odell Beckham Jr., titled it the long game. And that's what this is. Look, if you sign Odell Beckham Jr., he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, right? I know there were the reports and maybe he tore it before then. He tore his ACL after Michael Gallup is the point. And so however long you're waiting, we're waiting, all of us are waiting for Michael Gallup to return, Odell Beckham Jr. is further back in the process, in the timeline. And so that doesn't help you right now. If the Cowboys have the reason I think this is worth talking about is if the James Washington thing opened their eyes to say, we need help at wide receiver, let's go get Odell and let's just survive. Let's make it there. And then at a certain point in the season, we'll have CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Odell Beckham Jr., Jalen Tolbert. And that sounds awesome, obviously, right? That sounds great. But you still have to survive, right? So maybe the answer is Odell and somebody, another veteran who you move on from, or maybe you move on from somebody else. But I think you have to at least have the conversation before maybe the Cowboys didn't feel like it made sense to. But it is a name and a situation and a circumstance that I think makes sense. Not that this means anything, but a few weeks ago, Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports on the You Pod to Win the Game podcast, great NFL podcast, talked about, just this has always kind of made sense, like the glitz and glamour. Odell Beckham Jr. is a big-time superstar player. The Dallas Cowboys are obviously this big-time superstar brand. So the match makes sense in that way. Like I said, it doesn't solve the issue that is currently encircling the Dallas Cowboys, but I do think you have to have the conversation. Who do you want to see of those 5 names? Maybe somebody else that I didn't even list or I didn't even talk about. We would love to hear what you have to say. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. You can always shoot me an email, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or you can leave a comment down below and we'll get to those as well. But I think it goes without saying that the Dallas Cowboys really need to find some sort of answer at the wide receiver position. That has been the case for a while, and the James Washington injury, whatever the situation ultimately winds up being, has only magnified that particular detail. So we will see. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.